The wind came sideways off the plains at 40 miles an hour, and Mara Colby was on her knees in the cellar with a lantern between her teeth. Ice had sealed the cellar door twice already that night. Twice she had broken it free with the flat of a shovel. Now she counted jars by touch, her fingers gone numb inside wet mittens. Water glass had turned milky in the cold, but the eggs beneath it sat whole, pale, waiting. Upstairs, someone pounded on the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Mara, Mara, open up, it's Dale. The Ostergaard boys took sick. They got nothing at all. She was already moving, a crate of eggs against her hip, Scout barking once, sharp, at the black square of the doorway where the snow came in sideways like static. How many mouths, she said. 9 words. The only one she spared. 6, Dale Wickham said. Maybe more by morning. She did not answer. She counted jars instead, 41 left of the winter's 96, and started stacking them into the sled. 3 months earlier, none of this had seemed like the beginning of anything. It began, if it began anywhere, at the rail siding outside Fort Lou, where a drover named Hollis Rademacher had 200 ducks he could not sell and no patience left to keep trying. The birds had come up 6 somewhere past the Platte crossing, necks drooping, eyes crusted, a dozen already dead in the crates, and the rest not far behind by the look of them. Rademacher wanted them gone before the smell of them cost him his good stock too. $9 the lot. He told the gathering crowd outside the depot, and I'm doing you a favor taking your money for it. Cyrus Vantry, who ran the finest breeding flock of buff leghorns in 3 counties and had opinions about most things with feathers, laughed loud enough that his own hens startled in their crate wagon. $9 for 200 corpses, he said. Rademacher, you ought to pay us to haul them off. It was Mara who stepped forward. Widow 18 months, homestead half-mortgaged, son 11 years old standing quiet at her elbow with the dog's rope in his fist. She had $4 and change in her apron and a promise of 5 more from the widow Pruitt, who would later swear she never made any such promise, though she made it all the same. I'll take them, Mara said. Cyrus Vantry looked at her the way a man looks at a plow horse trying to enter a horse race. You'll bury 200 birds by Sunday, Mrs. Colby, and pay $9 for the privilege. She did not answer him. She never did, not in all the months that followed, not once with words. Eli helped her load the crates onto the wagon. Jasper, the gelding, did not like the smell of sickness and fought the harness the whole 4 miles home, ears pinned flat, and Scout would not come within 10 feet of the crates at all, circling wide, hackled, growling low at nothing anyone else could see. That night, going through the trunk that had belonged to her grandmother Freya, dead 11 years, come over from a fjord town where every household kept eider and mallard both, Mara found the tin box wedged behind a false board Freya herself had built into the floor. Inside was a notebook, water-stained, the ink faded to the color of weak tea, half in English and half in a language Mara had never learned to read but somehow, in that box, seemed to understand anyway through the drawings. Diagrams of duck housing, a recipe for mash, cracked corn, chopped nettle, a spoon of bone meal per 10 birds. Numbers in the margins. Quarantine no fewer than 10 days. Water changed twice daily. 1 tablespoon of vinegar to the gallon to keep the crop from souring. And on the last written page, underlined twice, an egg not gathered within a day spoils the whole jar. Water glass, 1 part to 9 of boiled water, cooled. A cellar no warmer than 55 degrees. Eggs kept whole 8 months, sometimes 9. Mara did not sleep that night. She built 2 pens by lantern light instead, dividing the worst of the sick birds from the merely weak, exactly as the notebook said to. It did not go well, not at first. She lost 43 ducks in the first 11 days, moved a batch back in with the healthier birds 2 days too soon, thinking them recovered, and watched the sickness jump the fence line she'd built between them. Cyrus Vantry, riding past on his way to the Grange Hall, reined up at the sight of the small grave trench along the tree line and did not bother hiding his satisfaction. $9, he called out, and every day it costs you more. Eli wanted to know if they should quit. Mara did not answer that either. She went back to the notebook instead, reading it by the stove until the candle guttered, and found the line she'd skimmed past the first time, separate not by which are healthy, but by how sick each one is, 3 groups not 2. She rebuilt the pens the next morning into 3, not 2. She scrubbed every water trough with lye. She began checking each bird's eyes by hand, twice a day, looking for the discharge to thin and clear. On the 14th day, a drake she'd nearly given up on blinked at her with one dry, clean eye, and the film across it was gone. She wrote the number on the chalkboard nailed inside the barn door, a habit of her grandmother's the tin box notebook had reminded her of. Ducks living, 148. Eggs, first week, 0. By late spring the number of living ducks had climbed to 161, and the first eggs had begun arriving, 6, then 11, then near 30 a day. Mara sold what she could spare at the depot for 4 cents apiece and put the rest down in water glass exactly as the notebook instructed, jar by jar, into the cellar Thomas had dug the year before he died. Then, in the second week of June, the locusts came. They came in a cloud that blotted the sun by mid-afternoon, and within 3 days Fort Lou's wheat, corn, and garden truck were gone down to bare dirt. Every stalk, every leaf, even the wooden handles of tools left out in the yard chewed soft. Cyrus Vantry lost most of a season's feed corn in an afternoon. The Ostergaards lost everything they'd planted. Mara's ducks, though, waded straight into the low wet ground along the creek and ate the locusts as fast as the locusts ate the fields, gorging on them by the hundredweight, and where her birds had ranged the grass came back green within the week, while the neighboring fields stayed stripped and gray. Filthy things earning their keep for once, Widow Pruitt admitted at the Grange Hall, which was as close to praise as the town chorus managed that summer. Reverend Whitcomb, cautious as ever, allowed only that the Lord provides in strange vessels. Sam Ostergaard's mother said nothing at all, only sent her boy over twice a week now to help gather eggs, and never once complained about the smell. Even so, by August, a fox took 11 ducks in a single night from the outer pen, tearing through a fence Mara had thought sound, and the loss cost her nearly a month's worth of egg money in replacement stock and mesh wire. Eli found her afterwards sitting on the overturned water trough, not crying, just sitting, staring at the chalkboard number she'd had to change downward for the first time since June. Maybe Mr. Vantry's right, Eli said quietly. Maybe it was luck. Mara looked at the tin box notebook a long while that night before answering him, and when she did answer, it was with her hands, restringing the fence wire tighter, driving the new posts deeper, hanging a lantern at the corner where the fox had come through. She said only, luck doesn't keep a ledger. The signs came in October, though almost no one but Mara seemed to read them as signs at all. The glass in Thomas's old barometer dropped 9/10 of an inch in one afternoon and did not rise. Jasper would not settle in his stall, kicking at the boards 2 nights running. Scout took to standing at the tree line at dusk, barking at nothing, hackles up, refusing to come in until dragged by the collar. A ring stood wide around the November moon, pale and doubled. Weather glass, Cyrus Vantry said when Mara mentioned it at the depot, buying nails. Rings around the moon mean nothing but ice crystals, Mrs. Colby. Every fool with an almanac knows that. She bought 40 extra pounds of cracked corn that same afternoon and said nothing more about it. The blizzard came 11 days later and did not stop for the better part of a week. The worst any of them, even the oldest settlers, could remember, arriving on the heels of a harvest already gutted by locusts, leaving root cellars half empty across the county before the first snow had even finished falling. That was where the story had begun. Mara on her knees in her own cellar, jars of duck eggs stacked around her like a hoard, while outside the wind screamed past 40 and Dale Whitcomb pounded on her door with 6 starving children behind him and more coming. She did not stop at the Ostergaards. By the second night, word had gone through Fort Lou the way word does in a place with nothing left to eat, that the widow Colby's cellar held food, real food, eggs enough to fry and boil and stretch into soup, sealed up and sound from the summer before. Families who had laughed at $9 for 200 dying birds came now up her drifted lane with sleds and empty sacks. The Vantry place, meanwhile, was losing its flock outright. Cyrus had built his coops for show, not for storm. Long, low, wide-roof structures meant to display fine birds to buyers, not to shed 3 feet of wet snow. On the third night the roof of his east coop gave under the weight, and 80 of his prize leghorns died under the collapse or froze in the open before he could dig a path to them. His own grain store, kept in a shallow root cellar dug too near the creek, took on meltwater and spoiled through by morning. Mara's coop held. She had built it low and steep-pitched at the notebook's suggestion, the roof shedding snow rather than bearing it. And still, on the fourth night, one wall began to buckle under drift piled higher than she'd ever seen it, the timber groaning audibly even over the wind. She went out at 2 a.m. with Eli holding the lantern and dug for 3 hours by hand, packing snow away from the base of the wall, driving in a brace post cut from the woodpile, working by feel when the lantern guttered out entirely. The ducks inside never made a sound the whole time, huddled together in the dark, and when dawn came the wall was holding and not one bird inside had been lost. It was Cyrus Vantry who came up the lane on the 5th morning, on foot, having lost the horse 2 days before to the cold, carrying his youngest against his chest under his coat. His wife walked half a step behind him, hollow-eyed, saying nothing. He did not ask. He stood in Mara's yard with the snow to his knees and simply waited, the way a man waits who has run out of other places to go. Mara handed him a crate of eggs without a word, then a second, then pointed him toward the barn where there was still hay enough to bed a family down warm for the night. Cyrus Vantry took the crates. His hands, cracking with cold, were not steady. He came back the next week, once the roads had opened enough for a sled, and without being asked, he spent 2 days rebuilding the brace wall of Mara's coop properly, squaring the timber, doubling the pitch of the roof on the weak side, driving posts deeper than even the notebook called for. He did not say he was sorry. He did not say anything about $9, or luck, or ledgers. He simply worked, silent, until the wall stood sound, and when he was done he nodded once toward the chalkboard in the barn. Ducks living, 149, jars remaining, 9, and rode off without another word passing between them. By spring, the town's accounting of that winter had settled into its own kind of ledger. 41 families fed at least in part from Mara Colby's cellar. 6 calves and 2 horses lost across the county to cold, but not a single child, which the Reverend allowed from the pulpit, was owed in some measure to eggs nobody had wanted to eat the summer before. Widow Pruitt took to calling them, without irony, the Colby stock, as though she had never once doubted them. Mara said little about any of it. She rose before dawn most mornings that spring exactly as she always had, walked out past the fence Cyrus Vantry had rebuilt, and knelt by the coop door to gather what the night had left her. 11 eggs, then 14, the count climbing steady as the days lengthened. She held one up to the gray early light, turning it slow between her fingers, checking the shell the way the notebook had taught her, the way her grandmother's hands must once have moved in a country an ocean away. Nothing about a duck egg looked like much of anything, she thought, setting it gentle into the basket. That was rather the point of it.